Kentucky. So then, you know, when
What years is this?
This was in the summer or in the spring after the year I had missed. So my freshman year, like in the spring after the season.
So is that what, 2000?
This is 2010.
2010, okay.
Yeah, so in that summer, because the season started, I didn't play that whole season. So then in the summer, I was kind of away from things and doing it. So then I got that call from Calipari, or from somebody who said Calipari might be interested. And that sparked my interest again, right? That made me excited a little bit about playing, because number one is Coach Calipari. Yeah. I'm like, man, if I was going to transfer something, I didn't think I'd have the opportunity to transfer up in schools.
And that's when they got a whip. They got.
They had the whole whip.
Was it John Waller?
But those were the dudes I had just come from the All-American class with.
Right.
Because they my class.
Yeah.
John, DeMarcus Cousins, and then Enes Kanter was transferring in from Turkey as well. And so he called, and we met, and he was like, I want you to come play for me. And I was like, okay, I want to come play for you. I'm with that. I know John, I know DeMarcus. You know, we came up through the circuit together. I didn't know Enes yet, but he was transferring. And then Calipari said to me, he's like, you know, we're going to put in a waiver, because this was back when if you transfer, you had to sit automatically.
Yeah.
Unless you had a waiver. So Calipari was like, we're going to put a waiver in for you. Hopefully we'll be able to get you to play this year coming up. But if not, I probably won't get to coach you, because we have so many pro scouts in our practice that you're going to end up getting drafted just from sitting out this whole year. And he said Enes Kanter, who's coming in, is probably going to have to sit too, because he had already played pro in Turkey, and they had to waiver him. He got drafted from just sitting out at Kentucky. So I ended up not going to Kentucky, and Baylor and UCLA were in there as well when I decided to transfer. But I ended up not going to Kentucky because me and my kid's mom were having our first son, and I wanted her to come and live with me, so that I could be there when he was born, you know what I mean, and support her through that pregnancy. And Kentucky, he wasn't having that. You know, he was like, we don't do the whole bringing your girlfriend thing. And I understood it. You know, I understood, and in retrospect, I get where he was coming from completely, and a lot of players get in trouble and stuff like that, doing those types of things. But I went to Iowa State instead. Oh, then I got a call from Fred Hoiberg, who knew me from, and we ran in some of the, you know, he had mutual friends because he was up here in Minnesota, played, and then he was in the front office. He got the job at Iowa State, his hometown, where he went to college. And he called me and was like, you know, I heard you thinking about transferring. This is my first year at Iowa State. I would love for you to come down. I went down and visited. A few of the coaches who were on the staff had already recruited me when I was coming out of high school the first time. And I asked him, you know, I want to have my child's mother here and you know, and be able to see him be born. They made it happen. You know what I mean? They allowed her to come down there and live with me. And my child was born in February that year. I got to see that, and mission accomplished. So I sat out that first year with a couple of other transfers, and then year two, the rest is history. Yeah.
So how was that experience there on campus? Was it totally different?
Oh, I mean, Ames is a little town. It's like 55,000 people total, and 30,000 of them are from the university. Right. So it's completely different than when I was here.
You had Lex access to you too, right?
Oh, I mean, it was just night and day.
Yeah.
I mean, being from the city at the U of M and having both neighborhoods a stone's throw for a 5-minute drive, and then being in the middle of a cornfield in Iowa.
Right.
Different.
For sure. But y'all, you did well in Iowa though. What'd you average in Iowa?
I averaged about 14 points a game, but you know, I led our team in every major statistical category. So I led the team in points, rebounds, assists, blocks, and steals. And I was the only player in the country to do that.
And y'all made it to the tournament that year.
Yeah, we made it to the tournament, and my average was messed up because I got the flu one game, and I went out to try and play the first few minutes, but my body was so weak I just had to get subbed out and went in the back and was sick the whole rest of the game. So when you get 0 like that in your stat column for a game, that'll throw your whole average off, right? So yeah, but yeah, man, that was a great season. We beat a bunch of teams that we weren't supposed to beat at the beginning of the season. We were predicted to finish in the bottom 3 of the Big 12. We ended up finishing 3rd in the Big 12, so at the top. And it was a star-studded conference. A lot of guys that played in the conference that year are still in the league today.
Yeah. Who was on that, I don't know if the game y'all lost.
Yeah.
Kentucky, right?
Yeah, so then we end up losing the kid. We end up playing. That's how universe works, right?
Yeah.
I was supposed to transfer to Kentucky.
Yeah.
I end up transferring to Iowa State, sit out a year. Then the next year that we actually play, we meet in the tournament and we get Kentucky in the.
But you had a good game though, right?
Yeah, no, I was dominant.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's Anthony Davis still praying I don't show up in the league tomorrow, for real.
Yeah.
For real, because I'm actually in my prime. I'm still in shape.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
How old is you now?
30.
30?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was a good game, though. That was a good game. That definitely set the tone. And
But they went on to win it, right?
They went on to win it, yeah.
Okay.
The scouts were all interested after that. Calls were coming in. This kid's first round draft pick for sure.
Yeah. And then you, what'd you end up getting drafted?
16th.
16?
Mm-hmm.
Is that still lottery or that's right outside lottery?
Right outside. I think lottery's the top 14.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that was Houston, correct?
Right.
Tell me about that. How did that go? You got drafted.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the whole draft situation is probably the biggest misrepresented part of my entire story. Because when I was like 16, 17, I got diagnosed with anxiety disorder, general anxiety disorder.
That's what I was gonna say though.
Mm-hmm.
You was one of the first, for me, but you was one of the first that I knew that was advocating
Mental
for
health.
mental health.
Right.
And he was kind of taking it like a joke. I feel like back then.
Oh, they were.
They were taking it like a joke.
They still are.
I mean, but now.
Now they say it's serious.
Yeah.
But they don't behave like it is.
Okay, but keep going. You got diagnosed.
Yeah. So I got diagnosed at like 17, and I carried that with me through the rest of my high school career and into college. And then when I played at Iowa State, so all my coaches, they knew about this. Thorson, Novak. Well, actually, Thorson didn't because I got diagnosed once I got to Hopkins.
You said 16. You got diagnosed.
16, 17.
Okay.
Man, right in there. And so Novak knew, Tubby knew, you know, Fred knew when I transferred to Iowa State. And they were great about it, man. You know, everything was, it was real smooth. Like, I didn't have really bad anxiety. I just would have panic attacks sometimes.
Yeah, I was going to say, explain what.
Yeah,
what
so,
that...
okay, so first, the way it first went down, and I was fortunate because our mutual friend or teammate, Mandela, had a different experience from marijuana, right? We all remember that Mandela's kind of break where he started to go south came from him smoking weed, or that was the story, that he smoked weed down there at the JUCO and somebody laced it with something bad and it kind of messed with his head. Well, I had a similar experience with marijuana. My first time smoking marijuana at 16, 17. And it caused me to have these panic attacks. And the panic attacks were basically the sensation like I was having a heart attack or dying. But it was really bad. Like, I really felt like I couldn't breathe. And, you know, the first time it happened to me, I had a complete out-of-body experience. I remember feeling like I was watching myself walk around like in a movie. It was that was that terrifying. But they kind of calmed down as time went on. But like for 3 months, I was having panic attacks 3 times a day, and I didn't know what it was. And then it kind of got a little bit better, but not too much.
And it just randomly. It's random.
Sometimes it was random, but sometimes it happened at the same time every day, which would really freak me out. Like, it'd be like 6:30 p.m. and it hit right on the spot. And so I kind of started to develop an anxiety about having a panic attack,
right.
Where every day now I'm like, man, I know around 6:30 it's going to happen again, type of deal.
And it wasn't like triggered by smoking or anything like that?
No, I stopped smoking.
Okay.
Yeah, that first time that triggered the panic attack, that was my first and only time smoking.
Indeed, okay.
Then I was done. And so eventually.
So that's common then, I guess?
That's common.
That's common, I guess.
Yeah.
Smoking bad stuff, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's actually common for people to have that.
In college, that's what happened at?
No, that was in high school.
Oh, that was in high school?
Yeah, that was in high school.
Okay.
And so then when I got to Hopkins, I was still having those symptoms, and I went into the nurse office one day and told her my symptoms, and she sent me to a doctor who we had at the school, and the Park Nicollet doctors donated their time to our school, so we had a doctor actually at the school, and she diagnosed me right away. She knew what it was right away, but I had spent like 6-7 months not knowing what it was. I thought I was dying or something. And then what really freaked me out was when we were young, I don't know if you remember Ladream,
Yeah.
but when we were young, Ladream actually had that heart condition and fell out in practice. And we were doing our conditioning drills, our suicides, and you remember the hustlers, we ran suicides like men as kids. The kids these days don't even understand, you know, that type of grit. We was running 30-second killers, man makers at 4th and 5th grade.
And if you missed it, the second.
If you miss it, you go on again. It was cutthroat. But my boy Ladream, who was Waylon's son, you know, he had a heart condition, and one day he fell out in practice, and they always thought he had asthma, but come to find out he had a birth defect where 2 arteries were pinching a nerve, and it was causing him not to get the right oxygen and circulation to his heart. So he had to have open heart surgery. He was never the same after that. So I carried that trauma and memory with me. So now, fast forward, I start having panic attacks. I'm like, damn, something's probably wrong with my heart. Turned out it wasn't. Turned out I was actually just having panic attacks. And then when the doctor diagnosed me, you know, she gave me some medicine and some diet things to try and sleep habits and things like that. It got better. And, you know, we went 31-0. So fast forward now, I'll tell you, to the Rockets.
Yeah, to the Rockets.
So that was the whole anxiety to start of it. So when I got to Iowa State, I made the mistake, you could say, of being in an interview and talking about my anxiety. I was doing a big feature. I think it might have been Sports Illustrated or ESPN. And they came to me and they're like, well, tell us about your game day rituals. I was like, well, I wake up, you know, I usually don't eat breakfast because of my anxiety. And then I go and stretch and get a hot shower, blah, blah. And the reporter's like, wait, stop, what? Like, go back. What are you talking about? What do you mean anxiety? Why don't you eat? And I knew right there it was going to be a big deal, but the cat was already out of the bag. So I just told him, like, no, I've been dealing with anxiety since I was in high school, and this is how it goes. And this was like 3/4 through the season, so I had already played most of the season dealing with this anxiety. And I told him about me being afraid to fly a little bit and that kind of triggering my anxiety sometimes and all of that. And he wrote a full feature about it. So then it became a big story in college basketball that I was this kid who was dealing with this thing called anxiety, and I was a little afraid to fly. We get to the tournament, and I'm still crushing people.
Right.
So now the story going into the draft is, okay, this kid is definitely a high lottery pick talent, NBA-ready skill set, but how does the NBA view mental health and anxiety? Is this a red flag? And as I went through the pre-draft process and I talked to all the teams, the same thing kept coming up. Is tell us about the anxiety. Tell us about the anxiety. I'm like, I'm not a doctor. Go ask your medical people about the anxiety. What? I'm 20 years old. What could I tell you?
What were they afraid of or concerned about? Like,
but they were just I don't think they were afraid or concerned about anything specific. I think they just really didn't know what they wanted to know more, right? And I just couldn't.
It never affected your play, though.
It never affected my play.
Right.
I led the entire country in every stat.
You never had a game.
Never missed a game.
Where it started or nothing? Or
never.
Okay.
No, but that is possible.
Right.
Later on, Kevin Love would come out and talk about that.
Yeah.
Right. He would come out and say, man, I started having panic attacks in the game where I had to run to the back. And everybody was like, where are you going? But you saw the whole establishment come wrap their hands around it.
Right.
I'm going to get to that in a minute.
Right.
Okay. Get to that in a minute. But so the pre-draft process narrative is like, Royce is a top 5 talent and skill set, NBA ready to go right now. Just came off of dominating Anthony Davis, made him look like a baby. Calipari, Anthony Davis in post-game press conference, NCAA tournament, like, whew, Royce almost beat us by himself. That was a close one, right? Because had I had it, that year, just to put in perspective, we were one of the highest three-point shooting teams in the country. We shot the three high clip, high frequency, high value.
At Iowa State, right?
At Iowa State. Yeah. That game, we went 2 for 17 from the three. So if we had been on that day even slightly, we would have clipped Kentucky that day.
Yeah.
Right? I kind of
remember that game.
I didn't have any help, and that's not to knock my teammates, just to say that usually they flame that thing up. They shoot that thing. Yeah. But that day, you know, we in the Yum Center. It's in Louisville, Kentucky, right up the road. They got 16,000 Wildcat fans in there. That pressure get to you.
Right.
So it got to us, and we ended up losing. But the point is, I had proved that I could play with this anxiety. So we go into the draft process, everybody's like, well, we don't know. It's a risk. So going into the pre-draft combine down in Chicago, I remember we all came together. They had the NBA office people and some of the union people, and Antonio Davis was there. I don't know if you remember Antonio Davis. He played for the Raptors, was a power forward, good dude. And I remember they were just talking, people don't realize, but the 60 guys that go to the combine are probably the 60 guys that are getting drafted, minus whatever international players may sneak in there or somebody who sneaks in there. But I remember them telling me, like, you getting drafted. And I was like, no, I'm not. I knew it. I knew it already. I was like, I probably ain't even gonna get drafted. I had it in my mind. I had it in my mind that because of the anxiety and the conversations that I was hearing, that I was gonna get looked over or skipped because of the anxiety.
What, 30, 60 times?
Isaiah Thomas, little Zeke went 60th. Draymond Green dropped to the late second round.
You're a little different than them, though. Coming out of high school.
Now think of what you're saying, though. But think about what you're saying, bro. I'm different than Zeke and Draymond. But this, I'm
saying at their levels, you was probably more highly recruited than Isaiah Thomas.
For sure.
Yeah.
But what I'm showing you is the narrative around me was so powerful.
Right. Okay.
That the Sports Illustrated did an article, and when LeBron James and them won that title in Miami, I think it was their second title. That was the year I was going into the draft, and the cover story was LeBron James in the second championship, and I had the feature spread in the very next article, the mystery pick. Where's Royce White gonna go? Because of this anxiety thing. So the narrative about the anxiety was already up and running.
Why you think it was so big, though? Why was it such a thing? You know what I'm
saying? There's a few answers. The first answer is that mental health wasn't really talked about in the mainstream media. But the second answer is that the NBA, as a part of a global corporate community, are predatory around the human psychology. The entire corporate community you see, the entire consumerism culture that we have here in America is all predicated on one idea: addiction, drugs. And whether it's real drugs or the drugs of social media or the drugs of materialism, whatever it is, it's all a material high. And the NBA is the same way. The mentality of fanaticism, which drives the NBA's viewership and audience and thus advertising, is all a part of one psychology. So why would they want a young black man coming in and saying, are we doing the right thing around the human mind?
Right, thinking for yourself, basically.
Well, it's not only thinking for me. I was asking a question about the entire culture.
Like, are you saying it was like threatening to
for sure?
To their agendas,
for sure. Because here's what happened. So I get drafted. Reason I get drafted, in my opinion, is because Fred Hoiberg had worked with Kevin McHale. Kevin McHale was the head coach in Houston at the time. Because Fred was in the front office at the Wolves when Kevin McHale was the coach for the Timberwolves. So they had a relationship. And Fred vouched for me to Kevin McHale and said, this guy is one of the most talented basketball players I've ever coached. He's one of the most talented basketball players I've ever been around. And Fred played in the league for 10 years. I mean, you know what I mean? He played for the Bulls.
Yeah, he
played for the Wolves, yeah. He's like, Royce, one of the most talented players I've ever seen. There's nothing he can't do on the court, and he's just breaking out of a shell. Like, his upside is ridiculous. Because remember, I had sat a year, and then I had the little trouble in high school, so I hadn't even had a consistent rhythm yet, really. I was still getting my rhythm. And Kevin McHale was like, all right, we're gonna get him. But when I got drafted, things took a different turn, and I got introduced to the business. And remember, I told you when I left the U of M, I was already a little funky about the business. Yeah. I already had a chip on my shoulder about the business, about the game that we grew up, cultivated in, hours spent, moms, grandmas, dads driving us across town, working 2-3 jobs, but still making time to get us there. Sure. coaches sacrificing time with their families to be in the gym with us, running those killers in the 4th grade, seeing my man almost die in practice, running suicides. Really, really put blood, sweat, and tears into the game at a young age, and then get all the way to the top and see that it's nothing more than a scam. That the business is really what drives it, and not even the business of basketball. The business.
Scam.
Oh, it's a scam.
Scam. Talk about that. Scam.
I'm going to get to it, but let me finish real quick. I get drafted. Stuff turns. Conversation about anxiety goes away because I'm drafted. So obviously the NBA is cool with it. But behind the scenes, when I have conversations with the Rockets about putting a plan together, for me, similar to what me and Fred Hoiberg had done at Iowa State, just in terms of open dialogue, being transparent about how I'm feeling and you know, whatever's going on, got crickets. They weren't giving us any rhythm. When I say us, I had a little team around me, people that were working for me, people that were, you know what I mean, around to try and help facilitate the transition. They won't give us any rhythm. So then I went to the rookie transition program, which all rookies are required to go to out in Hoboken, New Jersey. And they got this big 3-day seminar where basically people come in from around the league, ex-players and so on and so forth, and tell these stories. Watch your money. Every girl that comes around wants to have a baby, or she might accuse you of rape, which isn't that far off. I mean, some truth to that. Yeah. Stay off the drugs. Watch your attorneys who you sign over authority to, because people will steal from you. Watch your family members. They're going to switch on you. Just a rundown on what other people have seen happen in the league. Well, I'm in there with a whole different mindset. I'm in there listening for anxiety, mental health. What is there a player in here who's going to talk about dealing with what I deal with? No, never heard it. Till Chris Herron came to speak. A lot of people don't know Chris Herron, but he was a bad boy. And back in the day, he was a bad boy back in the day. And he was the guy who got addicted to heroin real bad. So he told his story about heroin and being addicted and what it was like, you know, leaving the game in the middle of the game at halftime to go score on the streets in the city, stuff like that. And it just resonated with me because I never did the drugs or none of that, but the feelings that he talked about, I understood. That fear, that loneliness, that anxiety. So what I did was I went back to my hotel room and I read my entire collective bargaining agreement, that's our contract, from front to back. There wasn't a single mention of mental health in the entire document. There wasn't a single mention of anxiety in the entire document. So the next week, I go to my team and I say, hey, we got to figure out what's the actual policy here? Like now I'm starting to wonder, where do I really stand? Now I'm starting to understand why it was such a red flag when I was coming through the draft process, because they didn't want to touch this issue. Didn't get no rhythm from the team again.
So you saying, just not to cut you off, but just to be clear, so you basically saying like they didn't have a plan, they didn't have
what I'm saying is the NBA has written down a policy for every single conceivable thing you could think of in relationship between the players and the team in the league, down to the color of your socks. If you wear different color socks than your teammates with certain given uniforms, you're getting fined. If you pop a expletive, a cuss word, you're getting fined. If you pop for marijuana, you're getting fined. They had a whole banned substance list, and on this banned substance list were drugs that I was prescribed from high school.
Okay.
So I'm looking at this banned substance list and I'm going, okay, well, how do you got these drugs on here that I'm actually prescribed to take by a doctor, but you don't have any conversation in this entire document about this condition? Seems a little one-sided. It seems like you're waiting to penalize. And that is what they were doing. That is why they didn't have the mental health laid out in the bargaining agreement. But I didn't know that at the time. So I went to them and I said, hey, listen, can we put something together, some type of policy, some type of written thing about me dealing with anxiety, because there's nothing here.
So that you're able to take your medicine? Is that what you said?
No, it wasn't. They okayed the medicine right away.
You had a pass for that?
They said if it's prescribed, that's cool.
Okay.
But the point
was, you saying basically in the hiccup to where if you take it.
But hey, Larry Sanders, see, here's the thing that people don't realize. smoking marijuana is a clinical symptom of anxiety. It's so common for people who deal with anxiety and depression to smoke marijuana that it's actually listed as a clinical symptom like sadness or fear. Okay? So that's how Larry Sanders, a couple years after me, ended up getting popped for smoking marijuana because he said, man, I've just been dealing with anxiety and depression and the marijuana helps me. I don't have an opinion on that. All I'm saying is that when I came through, I was already asking those questions. I was going, well, if this is on the list, why is it on the list? And here's why it was on the list. The drug that I was prescribed for anxiety and panic attacks and my fear of flying is called Xanax. Most people know what Xanax is. Some people use it recreationally, and they don't know how bad that's really messing their brain up. Xanax is probably the most addictive and dangerous drug in the world. And the reason why is that there's 2 drugs in the world that can kill you from withdrawals, meaning if you go cold turkey, it'll kill you. Alcohol, Xanax, benzodiazepines. Reason why is the way they work is they take over your central nervous system. That helps you relax. Why people take drinks when they're stressed. But if you go off of it cold turkey, your central nervous system will go haywire and you'll have a seizure. So that's why people who go off alcohol cold turkey sometimes die, people who go off of Xanax. So I knew that about Xanax. So I knew why I was on the list. And then I said to the league simply, they were like, well, what do you want? Like, what can we do? Because they just wanted to get it. They just wanted to not have to deal with the problem. Because the last thing they wanted to do was have to actually go write something up and put it in the bargaining agreement. So now they're dealing with me personally, like, well, what do you want? I was like, well, I would like to not have to take 90 Xanax a year in order to fly back and forth everywhere. I said, if we're going to Minnesota, if we're going from Minnesota to Chicago, just let me drive. That's one Xanax out. If we're going from Chicago to Milwaukee, let me drive. That's another Xanax out. If we're going from Orlando to Miami, that's another Xanax out. Houston said, okay. Houston was like, yeah, we got you. We can do that. No problem. That's reasonable. The team attorney said, I'll work it out with the league. The next time I talked, because now the beginning of training camp, I didn't go. I said, we got to put something in paper, or else I'm not dealing with this until we get some understanding. Because I'm not going to be out here. We're not going to be winging it. I'm going to play with my life. We're going to get it right. Keep dialogue open, figure out what we're doing, and let's get it right. So the attorney said, well, I'm going to handle it. We'll handle it with the league. That sounds all good. The next time I talk to him, he tells me, well, the NBA said if we provide you with transportation, like an RV, let's say, to drive from Chicago to Milwaukee, that the league will consider it a salary cap infringement. They'll consider it a bonus, and that they'll fine us millions of dollars or take draft picks from us. So they had gone to the league now to ask them how to deal with my mental health situation or with the anxiety that they hadn't sorted out and come up with a solution, a reasonable solution. Like, let me drive when I can. If we in LA, let me drive to Phoenix. It's like 4 hours, whatever. It's nothing. They was like, nah, that's a salary cap infringement. Authoritarianism.
They're giving you extra. That's what they were saying. That's what they was claiming.
That's what they was claiming.
Yeah.
But it was just power. Yeah. It was just a power thing.
They wouldn't let you pay for your own? Or you was like, I'm not paying for my own?
Well, no. The collective bargaining agreement didn't allow me to pay for my own. Because the collective bargaining agreement says that the team has to take care of all travel. And so the union wasn't going to let me pay for my own travel. The union stepped in and they said, nah, listen, if he's going to travel by ground transportation, make sure it's the highest level of ground transportation, like chartering a flight, private, with private dining. Now, I was like, I don't need the catering and all of that stuff. You know, throw me some little vittles on the bus or whatever like that, and I'm good to go. I ain't high maintenance or nothing. I'm not asking you to cater to transportation. I ain't tripping off of that. Yeah. I'll get something to eat when I get there. So, but my point is, while all this is going on, the mainstream media created this narrative that I was some, diva or prima donna asking for all this special treatment. And that was the narrative that went around the world 3 times.
Yeah, I definitely heard that.
That's
I
right.
definitely hear that.
That's
and
right.
More so, too, now that you break it down, I heard more so just like the plane was the central
There
issue,
you go.
The
great scam.
Not kind of the back stuff. That's why it's always good to had dialogue about this type of stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
but see, and that's my heed of warning to the people that are watching and to everyone as I've gone forward now is we've been lied to. I experienced it. You know, when people talk about the establishment line or the mainstream media line or that all they do is tell us lies, I lived that. I've watched the mainstream media, and I'm not talking about KARE 11, WCCO, USA Today, New York Times, Sports Illustrated, Yahoo. I watched them print information and articles in a way that completely misrepresented what I was going through or what my position was on any of these issues, to the point where they didn't even call me sometimes. They just got to write based on what somebody else said. And it went around the world 3 times. That's why Winston Churchill said a lie gets around halfway around the world before you get a chance to put your pants on getting out of bed. I really lived that. So that narrative started to drive, the public sentiment towards me. It was like, oh, you're just a prima donna. Smoke a little weed and get on that plane. Smoke a little weed, have a drink and get on that plane. They were playing on the fact that black folks around the world, but throughout America, from the communities we come from, weren't up on the mental health thing yet. So they couldn't have the same outrage they did about Kaepernick a few years later. Everybody was outraged about Kaepernick. Why? Because everybody where we grow up from, they understand the idea of racism. Racism's already on the plate for them. But when it was mental health, they were able to kick me under the rug and let everybody laugh at me and go, oh, see, this kid's stupid for not wanting to play, for not wanting to just get on the plane.
And you think part of that was a scam to penalize you, to be penalizing players, basically? So basically, one of the things is to smoke weed.
Right.
Where weed is finable, you know. So they are.
That's a part of it.
Okay, I'm just trying to get clear what you saying.
Yeah, no, I would say
their angle is.
Think of it this way. Think of it this way. We're the biggest drug cartels today, in your opinion.
Where?
Where
Where are the biggest drug cartels?
Where are the biggest drug cartels today?
Mexico.
Mexico, right?
Yeah.
No. Silicon Valley.
What's that, LA?
Silicon Valley is Palo Alto, Northern Cali. You're right,
Cali.
yeah. It's where big tech is. It's where Google is. It's where Apple is. It's where Instagram and Facebook. These are the biggest drug cartels of the day. They selling the best drug. They got the best product on the market. Guess what?